War Room Sports. www.warroomsports.com. What? Ain't no more to it.
For those who don't know who she is, she's an analyst and columnist for ESPN, and she also wants to write soap operas. I think that's where I read somewhere that one of her goals is to become a soap opera writer. So let's just bring her on. For the first time in the War Room, let's bring on Jemele Hill. Hey, Jemele, you there?
I'm here. Why you guys gonna put me on blast and talk about how I write soap operas? We already off on a bad note.
New York Jets.
Look, Jemele, if you write one, we definitely going to watch it, though, so it's all good.
Oh, don't be trying to soften the blow now. No, I mean, everybody asks me about, like, what my guilty pleasure is, so to speak, when I'm not writing about sports or talking about it. Well, my guilty pleasure is that I've been watching Young and the Restless now for 15 years. And so when I go home, being I'm not home a lot, that is my favorite thing to do is to sit there and just kind of plow through like 15 episodes of Young and the Restless. And so I'm a huge fan of the show. I understand. Yeah, I am.
I ain't going to front. I used to watch the Young and the Restless. It was more about force back in the day, when my sister used to watch me when I was home from school.
Let me guess, what woman forced you to watch that show?
Yeah, it was definitely by force, but, hey, you learn to respect and like certain things. But that's
absolutely. Hey, Jemele, we were just talking before you came on about the Jets. So let's just start off by asking you, what's your opinion of this whole situation with the Jets and blasting Tebow?
Well, I think the Jets, the Jets do what they do, which is they try to be the Super Bowl champions of headlines instead of actual football. And I think I'm a little bit surprised at how they've used or not used Tim Tebow, because if you're going to give up draft picks, and we know how draft picks are at a premium in the NFL. I don't care if you're talking about a second-round pick or fourth or seventh. I mean, those things are hoarded for a reason. So to give him up and then to not use him in any situation that he's frankly good at, it's just very perplexing. Like, I just don't get it. And so on some level, I think the Jets are just getting everything they deserve.
Yeah, pretty much. It seems like they're just always in the news for the same things, about somebody not being able to control their mouth, whether it's the coach, the players in the locker room, or whatever. But Jemele, this is Devin.
They are the soap opera.
This is Devin. We're going to switch gears to another team, but a team that's in the same position, the 3-6 Philadelphia Eagles. We got to ask you about the Eagles' quarterback situation. Do you think a good performance by Nick Foles, if he ends up starting, do you think that keeps Mike Vick on the bench, even, if his concussion issues subside, much like how Mike Vick got the job in the first place? Or do you see it as normal protocol where Vick will reclaim the job when he's ready?
Well, I think they're going through normal protocol now, but let's not act like there's not a window that has been created, much like the window that allowed Michael Vick to take over for Kevin Kolb. I mean, it just feels like in Philadelphia they're ready to move on and usher in a new regime at both quarterback and head coach. That's what it feels like. And so I think this is kind of the early stages of them moving on from Michael Vick. I mean, he's doing a huge roster bonus. I think they feel like that they can do that they need to just completely divorce themselves from him and from Andy Reid, and that's what I think they're trying to do. Now, I don't think I got to see something out of Nick Foles. I mean, I remember him vaguely in college. I'm not sure if he's exactly the player they're trying to move on to, but
right.
I think it's definitely fair to say that they have that the separation has occurred. Now they're moving into divorce proceedings.
And I agree with your point. The only thing that makes me a little skeptical is because, until they do move on from Andy Reid, he's still in charge. So he might just want to go down, want his ship to go down with his guy, Mike Vick. But on the other hand, if the organization wants to pressure him into seeing what Nick Foles can do so they can make decisions after Reid is gone, I could also understand that side of the coin.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that there's an element of truth to that. And you also have to think, if you're Andy Reid and you have the pulse of that locker room, you can't ignore how the players might respond either. if the players feel like the one thing you don't want to communicate is that you're looking forward to next year already, particularly since they have not been mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. So I think it's a really delicate situation. You can't start the evaluation process of players because your current players are going to feel like you've given up on them. So this is going to be, these next 3 or 4 weeks are going to be very interesting in Philadelphia. And I just think in the off season, they're just really headed for some abrupt changes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow, okay. Jemele, this is Akil. A pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here.
All right, and I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on the Miami Marlins fire sale / salary dump / whatever you want to call it? Are they breaking promises to the community to field a competitive team that they made while trying to get their new stadium built?
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I mean, this is the jilting of a fan base like I just haven't seen. And the funny thing is, it was so much evidence to point to the fact that this is just who the Marlins are and what they do. And yet there was a big piece of everyone that wanted to believe that they wouldn't do what they've always done, which is win, fire sale, not build, kind of take it haphazardly. And I just feel really bad for those fans because that new ballpark, they're already underwriting the community like 70% of the cost. So you do that, and you promise them a winner. You fired Ozzie, and I think he didn't deserve it. Now you've completely let the team go. You've traded everybody of any kind of significant value or talent, and it just shows that baseball in South Florida has a long way to go. It's not the fans' fault. Clearly, it's on the ownership. So I just think this is just a gross example of ownership taking their fan base for granted.
Agreed.
You're talking about the 13 fans that show up religiously?
Well, can you blame them? I mean, like at this point, you can't even blame them. I mean, it's like, wow. And I think to me what they did to them regarding the stadium is far more egregious. This is bad, don't get me wrong, but they gave off the misperception that they were losing money. There was no way they were going to, get a new stadium done if they didn't have the fans, public funding, and it wasn't true. I mean, it turns out they lied about a lot of the financial documents, so it's like they built them twice. So this is a horrible situation. If I were a Marlins fan or a South Florida resident, I would never go to a Marlins game. I mean, just out of genuine protest. But, this is tough. But this is sadly a part of the sports business that, people don't like to confront or face. This is what happened.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah. We saw that you released an article yesterday on the firing of Mike Brown in L.A. Just in case they haven't read it, tell our audience how you viewed that firing by the Lakers and perhaps even the hiring.
Well, I think people thought I was trying to make the case that Mike Brown was a fit for the Lakers. I wasn't convinced he was ever a fit, but I do think him being fired 5 games into the season sort of represents this uncomfortable age that we're in sports. People have always been hired and fired in sports. That's just a part of the business. But I think there's just so much. There's a big lack of patience now in sports. It's not just at the pro level. It's at the college level. It's at the high school level, where because of the way sports media is, it moves so rapidly. It allows for all these conversations that I think fans in their minds begin to build up unrealistic expectations they're just not possible. I mean, the Lakers, whether you fire Mike Brown, don't fire him, Hasher, Jackson or not, they're not a championship team. They aren't. And could they round into one? Maybe, but I mean, let's be real. That's not a team that you can look at and say, oh, they for sure are going to win a championship. And so the fans have gotten this idea that there is some kind of easy recipe to win one. Phil Jackson is a great coach, and I'm not trying to take a single thing away from him, but let's be honest about the kind of players that he's had throughout his career. I mean, we're talking about some of the greatest players ever. And, I think I may have heard Charles Barkley quip one time, when the Clippers were bad, well, you can't run the triangle with the Clippers and they all of a sudden turn into something. I mean, it is, I think fans look for easy solutions, and for fans, the easiest solution is always fire the coach, and that's not always the case.
Yeah. Going back to soap operas, do you think the Lakers made a good choice by hiring D'Antoni? And whether or not you think he's the right choice, you think they disrespected Phil Jackson? How do you feel about the way everything went down with those two?
Well, I think the Lakers' biggest crime was that they tried to have it both ways. They wanted the public to believe that they were going after Phil Jackson, when the truth is, when he left, they were happy he left, not the players, but the management. Jim Buss has an ego, and he didn't like the fact that Phil Jackson commanded much more of the respect around the organization from the players to other front office people than he did. He didn't like that. He didn't want to work with Phil Jackson. And, on top of that, he's also in a serious relationship with his sister. That wasn't going to work. So instead of, doing the gutsy thing and just saying, we don't want Phil Jackson, we want Mike D'Antoni, they ran this sort of shell game, if you will, this bait and switch, because they feared the public backlash. And to me, anytime organizations respond and make decisions out of fear, that already shows a tremendous sign of weakness and a lack of leadership. If you wanted Mike D'Antoni, you should have gone after Mike D'Antoni and made it clear, we don't want Phil Jackson back. We want Mike D'Antoni, and we don't care what the hell anybody else has to say about it. I can live with that. And even if it is eventually the wrong choice, at least you're doing what you feel like is in the best interest of the organization. I actually think that this hire is going to work. And by work, I mean I think the Lakers are going to be good. I didn't have them winning the NBA championship anyway, so I still don't think that that's going to happen. But I think the team is going to look a lot better. I think Mike D'Antoni is an experienced coach. People can hold the New York Knicks against him if they want, but he didn't want Carmelo Anthony, and he said that from the beginning because he knew he couldn't work with Amari Stoudemire, and you can't say so far that he's wrong. He didn't win in Phoenix because there was a guy named Tim Duncan and another dude named Greg Popovich. Yeah, he's not the most defensive-minded coach, but this idea that he's some kind of scrub, and that's what I was getting to about this sort of quick knee-jerk mentality that I think fans have, where they dismiss people unless they have rings. The truth is, Mike D'Antoni's a good coach. He's a good coach. I mean, he may not be in the first. Yeah, he may not be in the first tier of coaches, because guess what? It's only a handful of coaches that do have rings in the NBA, but he's in the second tier.
Yeah, see, Jimmy's he's our resident Lakers fan, and for this whole week, B. Austin and I have kind of been trying to talk him off the ledge. We understand the whole thing with D'Antoni.
I didn't want Phil either.
Defense.
As a Lakers fan, I wanted Nate McMillan. I wanted Nate McMillan or Brian Shaw to get a chance.
Right.
Well, but here's the thing about Brian Shaw. Now, I have nothing against Brian Shaw at all. I'm sure he'll one day make a good coach. To me, this is one of those instances where people hear a hot name, they assume that the hot name is indeed the next greatest coach, and they just start repeating, it should be Brian Shaw. To me, it's a really big red flag when not a single organization outside of L.A. considers him to be a head coach. Doesn't that mean something? To me, if he's such a hot coach, because the one thing, when you see hot coordinators, they usually have several interviews. There's not just one team that wants him. Phil Jackson, by most standards, is considered the greatest NBA coach ever. He has Phil's support and complete endorsement. If that's the case, why won't anybody else hire him?
Yeah, the funny thing is I actually wanted Brian Shaw before they even hired Mike Brown. The number one guy on my list was Nate McMillan because I just wanted Nate McMillan. I was impressed what he did when he coached the Blazers.
I think Kobe Bryant got Brian Shaw's name into these coaching conversations.
Yeah, Kobe loves him, and that makes a lot of sense because, he's really he's comfortable with him. He knows the players, and I'm not trying to slight Brian Shaw at all.
No. I wouldn't even take it as such. I just feel like, and this is B, I just feel like you're making very valid points that because Kobe considers him a good fit, that's because Kobe will get to do what he wants. That doesn't mean he'll be good for the organization.
Right.
So,
yeah, and I just think that I would just like to see and know more about what he can do. I think he probably is a good coach, but I don't think that that they can relate. Yeah, no, I mean if you have Mike D'Antoni or Brian Shaw, you gotta go with Mike D'Antoni. I'm sorry, like he's proven a lot more.
The guy I actually wanted was Nate McMillan, but it looks like that he'll possibly be an assistant with D'Antoni. So
maybe he can coach some defense
because of their Olympic team. Because they're Olympic team.
Right. Before we let you go, though, one point you made was that Mike D'Antoni was in the second tier, and somebody in our chat room, Corey Camp 254, says second-tier coaches should not be coaching the Los Angeles Lakers.
You know what? I understand what he means, but here's the thing. And I feel like we have this conversation in the NFL often because in the NFL, everybody's hung up on who's elite and who's not. Guess what? It's only 5 elite quarterbacks, okay? Maybe 6.
True.
Depending on you can arrange those chess pieces however you want. There are 32 teams. So you mean to tell me 26 other quarterbacks suck? That's not the case. The 26 other quarterbacks aren't worthy. That is not the case at all. Look, who in the NBA has rings? That is coaching. Doc Rivers and Eric Spoelstra and Greg Popovich. They're fine. So why don't you – so when they say second-tier coaches, well, if those are the only 3 in the NBA with rings, who else you got?
All of their assistants. Make all of their assistants.
And by the way, 3 of the last 5 NBA championship coaches have been first timers. Oh, by the way.
We just got a question. We just got a question on Twitter real quick. I just want to get your point on this. It says, didn't D'Antoni quit on the Knicks? So how do you hire someone who actually quit?
I think the Knicks quit on him.
Okay.
And again, people have to understand the situation. I'm not trying to give D'Antoni a pass, but when a coach, that was a James Dolan move to get Carmelo. Now, ultimately, they may be right, but D'Antoni, as a coach, did the right thing. When they asked him his opinion, he told them he did not want Carmelo Anthony because if you recall, before they got Carmelo, everybody was talking about Amari as a potential MVP candidate. That team was playing really well. Now, ultimately, they did need a superstar to get them over the hump because they had a good collection of players that had some good chemistry, Felton, Gallinari, and those guys can play, as we see. They really can. They were going to need a superstar. He just wasn't convinced it was that superstar. When you consider his offense, it makes a lot of sense. So, it is what it is.
In the Lakers instance, I was rooting for Bernie Bickerstaff to remain the head coach for eternity. I'm a Sixers fan, so I want to see Bernie Bickerstaff in the draft.
All right, Jemele. Well, we were going to ask you about McNabb, but we didn't want to be here 7 more hours. So
I got dinner plans, so let's make sure.
Before we let you go, tell our audience how to get in touch with you, your Twitter, Facebook, or whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm on Twitter under a very complicated name, Jemele Hill. So it's just my first and last name, and I'm also on Facebook, so you can like my page, also under Jemele Hill, and I'm still a columnist for ESPN.com. Write about once a week, search the old archives and find me. And I'm doing sideline reporting now, so every Friday night on our college football coverage, I am the sideline reporter. And this Sunday I'll be doing sports reporter, so a lot of stuff on the plate, that's for sure.
All right, we will be tuned in. We'll make sure that our fans are tuned in as well. We'll flash it all out there for you.
Now a friend of the War Room, so we'll welcome you back.
Well, good to have you guys, and anytime. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jemele.
All right, Jemele. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Kuwait is the War Room with 5 nights at the round table, 5 Philly guys.